Okay, so what I want to do today is some examples with JavaScript and Ajax. I want to essentially tell you the thing about local and remote time. I want to go over the stars that are good review examples, also how to do star ratings. And then if I can, I want to start talking about the shopping cart implementation. I want to start with a piece of good news. Actually, I completely forgot that Monday was vacation when I set the homework. So I set the deadline on a vacation day, which I think is terribly nasty to do. So I will give you at least a one-day extension. My apologies. I really never want to do these. You know, when I tried to fix an appointment with some people over Monday, they started complaining, and then I realized what I was doing. You know, normally I keep very well track of vacation days. I don't know how it happened to me actually, but so you know, I would have programmed to take off and go somewhere, but no, instead. So I missed my chance, I guess. But at least, so I'll have it at least due on Tuesday. And I can do this because anyway you have both homework assignments. So, you know, even if I delay the deadline, I'm not postponing and putting too close to the finals the deadline of homework 2, you know, of homework 5, I guess. The other thing is that I don't yet have the rooms for the final project presentations, okay? So I cannot have you sign up for those yet. And this is kind of normal because the registrar's office, the way it works is that it first wants to schedule other things and the regular finals. I don't know, they are always releasing rooms very late in the process. And it has happened every year. Every year in the end we have obtained the rooms. The staff in the School of Engineering are already aware that we need the rooms for the final project presentations. What I'm trying to get is a total of 5 3-hour blocks. You don't need to attend all 5 blocks, okay, for your good fortune. But you need to attend the one in which you have scheduled. But it's just that given the number of students, I think I need about 5 blocks of 3 hours, okay? So it will be like a marathon week for me and the TAs, but that's okay. Okay, so that's why I haven't put out the reservation sheet yet. Okay, so these are sort of the. Tomorrow I will process the lectures and upload them. I really need to find a better way because it's hogging so much of my laptop time. You know, I need to really find the days in which I can actually devote so many hours of my laptop with me not around trying to do work. For me to process the video, so that's really a problem. I don't know what to do. I mean, maybe I should buy another laptop, but then I need to buy another, and you know, and I would need to serve. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a great laptop or a computer. You just have to have that at your.
Yeah, but then I have to buy 2 licenses of the program, one for recording and the other one for uploading. Yeah. I mean, so yes, I may have to do that at some point. Yeah.
Increase crowd rater by another penny.
Yeah, no, I get it, you know, now it's too late for this year. The other is I was more patient, or perhaps I had less, you know, always going on that I wanted to have my laptop with me, but whatever. So apologies if I'm a bit late in uploading the video. There has been one student complaining that that Stripe Vue single cart doesn't work for that person, okay? I uploaded a new version of the code in which I reinstalled the requests library in the modules. I just want to show you and maybe give it a try. You know, it should work, my naked branch Stripe Vue single cart without any modification. And if it doesn't, maybe you know, if you could try, Scott, that would be great. I just want to show you this detail because it's important. In every project in Web2Py, there is a directory called modules, which contains the modules that are specific of that particular application. Okay, so when you load something, it's loaded out of there with priority to what is on the rest of your operating system. And also when you put it on App Engine, you know, that's the place where these modules are taken. Because otherwise, I mean, suppose you need a funny module that is called my spatial computation. If you install it just on your laptop, it's great. Your laptop will have it while you try the code, and your code will work. But then when you give it to another student to grade, or when you upload it on CrowdGrader, on App Engine, the module will not be there, right? Because it's not part of the application, so it's not packaged together with the application, you have a special module. So if you want to install modules in such a way that the people who use your application also have them, you have to put them into this modules directory. And the way you do it, I have it here because I just did it before coming to class, is this. For requests, oh boy, I think I have too much history. But the command I gave is pip install. So pip is the Python package manager, right? So if you need to install a special package like requests, what you do is say pip install target modules requests. And this installs the module and all its dependencies into the target directory. Okay? And so it gives you everything you need. And so you see here that what you need is a whole bunch of modules. So what I asked is requests. Well, Stripe was already there, and so it installed also URL-lib3, it installed the IDNA, Chardet, Certify, and all these various stuff that I actually don't know what it does, right? But I guess it's required by requests, okay? So that's the way you add modules to an application in such a way that when you package it and upload it, the modules are available. Is this clear? And so one of the small traps is the following, that if you don't do this, when you upload your application in CrowdGrader and somebody else downloads it, if you are using a special module and they don't have it, then they won't be able to use your application. If the module you are using is not included in this modules directory, okay? So unfortunately, you have to pay a little bit of attention to this, because it may affect homework 5. Okay, so you may want to do a merge. I will write it into the instructions, but you may want to do a merge between the tip of this branch and, or maybe simply repeat this install command. That would be the easiest actually, for you to repeat this pip install -t modules requests. Okay. Because that will guarantee that you have the latest version. So give it a try perhaps, and let me know if something doesn't work with my Stripe Vue single cart, how it is called, cart Stripe single page app. Because to me it works, and so if it doesn't, I need to debug it. Okay, so is there any question, or shall I start with the star ratings? Done in two different ways, as good and a fun example of JavaScript. Yeah?
For homework, are we actually using Stripe? Do we need to, or?
Yes, I mean that's what the requirement is. You use the PayPal? No. I see. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you find it a bit. I mean, do you find it a good homework or not? Actually, out of curiosity, I think it's interesting to learn how to sell stuff or monetize, right? I mean, it's an interesting thing, and there are some interesting security concepts. So why not? To me, it seems interesting. But it is a little bit of a pain because you have to require these public and private keys. So there is a bit of a pain. The pain is not large, actually. Stripe, if you ask for just a pair of private and public keys, I think you just need to sign in for testing. When you then want production keys that enable you to truly charge credit cards, then Stripe does a little bit of verification on you. So you may not be able to get production keys. What it asked me when I did it was essentially a bank account and a federal taxpayer number for the company. So you typically have to have those, which is something that if you have a company, you have, no? But it's not something, then they want the bank account that is linked to the company. They do these transactions in which they put you there a random number of dollars and you have to say how many dollars they gave you, you know, these kind of verifications to show that you are linked. But I will tell you better about Stripe when I get to Stripe, actually, so I don't go too much out of route today. Any other question? Oh, yes. So I gave a couple of advice before I start on Piazza, and I got a couple of feedback, and so I just wanted to repeat it for the people here. There has been some feedback that is hard to get the list of users, right? And so I just want to say it shouldn't be very hard, because, for example, one way is this. You can say DB, this is posted on Piazza, but just to repeat it, DB auth user ID greater than 0, select. This gives you the list of all the users, okay? So if you do for row in this, and then you iterate on these, and you say, for example, like first name is equal to row dot first name, like last name is equal to row dot last name, and email is equal to row dot email. You can do these, right? Now the other question is, how can I avoid reading myself? Because you know you want you as top user, and then you want everybody else. How do you get this everybody else? Well, that's quite easy, because you can just say that the user ID has to be different from your own user ID, which is, of course, because we used it in the past, is auth.user.id. No? So this is a simple query that will spit out all the users who are not you, who are not the currently logged in user, right? So I think this should help. This was not an intended difficulty of the homework. I think, you know, it's difficult to forecast for me exactly what are all the sticking points with homework. So I rely a bit on people asking on Piazza. This was not intended to be a blocking point, and I hope this is not too complicated, right? So do you have any other question on the homework that you would like me to answer? No? Yes? Okay. So let's do these star ratings. So there are two approaches. There is the Wu approach, which I give you, even though by now you know everything about Wu, well, almost. And then there is the JavaScript approach, which is kind of fun. So the Wu approach is by me, and the star approach is by Massimo. I mean, the raw JavaScript approach is by Massimo, because he did it, you know, before we decided to use Wu in classes. So let me just go to the right branch. Okay, I have a gazillion branches. If you want to follow, this is oh boy, one second. Maybe I should find it here. Okay, stars Wu is the Wu, then the stars done in Wu. Okay, fine, found it. And then I have stars, which is the other approach. First, the one done in Wu. So what do I want to do essentially? I wonder if this app works. Let me try my luck, okay?
I think it's 8800.
Thank you. Okay, this works. Well, where are the stars? I probably need to log in in order to be able to use the stars, okay? So I wonder whether I can log in with my classic. Yes, okay. Yeah, banana. Yeah. I don't, you know, you get stuck. I mean, fruit is inoffensive, right? Nobody gets excited when you talk about fruit, so it's great. So, you know, the reason you cannot rank before you log in is that here I imagine that the ranking is, and this is actually part of a many-to-many relation. And this, this, by the way, is a part of homework 5 that I was a little bit sad to remove. I really wanted to be able to give you a homework in which you had to either favorite these images or put them in a cart in a way that was more persistent. So even though in the end I decided to simplify homework 5 because I decided it contained enough other stuff already, I just want to tell you the principle. If you need people to be able to favorite images or rank them or so, you know, give them stars, what you need is a bipartite relation. So let me tell you how the database tables would look like, because I don't think I've implemented them in this way. I mean, I don't think that I bothered implementing database tables, but let me look at them. Yeah, in fact. So you see there is a... well, I have in a sense, but so you see the rating is essentially a relation between a user and an image. Okay? So it's a many-to-many relation. There are many users, there are many images, and I have a table that not only points to two outside the tables. In this case, the bad part is that image ID is simply an integer, because this is a very bare bones implementation in which I skipped a lot of detail about how to implement it, okay? In truth, I would have had to have an image table, as in your homework 4, and then I would have had to have a many-to-many relation between users and images. This gives you a little bit of a flavor of this, right? Because for every image and for every user, I need to be able to ask, did this user actually rate this image, yes or no, you know, and fish out the rating. If the person hasn't rated it yet, as is the case now, then the star ratings are blank. And if I have them rated it already, it should stick. So let's look, before we look at the implementation, and how I want this site to behave. Let me enlarge it a bit so the video captures it a bit better. Prize if you can tell where these photos are taken. I mean, these you cannot guess, I guess, and neither you can these. These two are landscape around here in a 200-mile radius. So the behavior is this. At the beginning, the stars are blank. When you hover on them, without clicking, it has to follow, essentially, it has to light up the star you are hovering on and all the ones to the left, right? And when you click, it gives me the confirmation that, as you saw, that the signal is transmitted to the server. And now when I go away, it sticks, right? Whereas here, when I go away, it doesn't stick. Okay, so this is not very complicated, but I think it's a kind of cute example of something that is not too complicated, and I think it's interesting to study the two solutions. How is this implemented? Let's give it a look at it. So this is the code. Okay, so as you can imagine, there is a loop for each image, which is this loop here. Okay, so this is the image tag. So here I display the image. Okay, so far is great. And then there is this div, which is present only if the user is logged in, which will contain the stars. Okay, and here I do something like this. I define two spans, one inside the other. Okay, in which I associate events on mouse over and on mouse out. Mouse over means if you are hovering. Mouse out means if the mouse is leaving this area, right? I want to define these two different behaviors. And also on click. So, and I simply have callbacks. You know, if you are over a star, I call mouse over. If you click on a star, I call set stars. Okay? For each star, so for each star I have a mouse over and a click listener, and then I simply put out the list of stars. You know, there are two icons, okay, and I do the following trick. So in order to save on memory, or in order to have a sort of obvious approach, I keep for each image a number in JavaScript that is the number of stars to display. if the index of the star is smaller than or equal of the number of stars to display, the star will be displayed filled, the fast star. And if the index is larger, it's displayed empty, fast star O. Okay, so that's what controls the display. The display is controlled by these num stars display. Okay, and then I have these click listeners for when I mouse over a star, for when I click it, and for when I leave the general area of all the stars. These are the events to fill in. Okay, and we have to assign some logic to these three handlers. So if we look at the logic, okay, just 1 second. The easiest behavior is the mouse over. Because in the case of the mouse over, regardless of whether I have already set the value of the stars or not, the behavior is very simple. In the case of the mouse over, I set the number of stars to display to the index of the star over which I'm mousing. Okay? So that should be very easy code. In fact, I simply say self-vo image list of image index, number of stars to display is equal to the star index. Okay? So that's the very easy case. Okay? Now, when you mouse out, when you remove the mouse, what happens? That the number of stars to display should be set to the stored number of stars. Maybe you know, like here, I set it to 4 stars, no? Then when I'm mousing over, I can have another rating. But when I mouse out, this needs to go back to what is stored. So on mouse out, I say self-vo image list, the number of stars to display, is equal to self-vo image list image index dot number of stars. Okay, so the number of stars is what is communicated to the server and is the true rating of that image for that user. And number of stars to display is a convenience variable that I use in order to drive the visualization. Okay, and when you mouse out, I set the number of stars to display to coincide with the ones that you that are stored. Okay, and so now you can of course imagine what is the action of when I click, right? What should it be the action when I click? Is it here? No, it's not here. Yeah, it's here actually, so you can see it easily. But the image does something like this. Okay, I take the image and I set the number of stars to the star index. So this essentially says, you know, is the reverse of this operation in some sense, right? That and now I affect the num stars, which is the number of true stars. And then I do a tiny bit of stuff. Now I say that pending is true. This means, you know, this will display the spinner that I'm waiting to send the confirmation to the server, right? And then I say, okay, this is one fine line. And maybe I should give you a hint. So I cannot write self-vo image list of image index is equal to image. Okay, I don't know why this would have been a good idea to do it. In truth, I don't actually know why I wrote the code in this way. I think, you know, nowadays I would just have written with a dot notation there. But I think I wanted to explain the past year that you cannot do this. So this you cannot do it. It's just an example. I don't think I wrote this code in the optimal way. Okay, I think I could have written it in a better way. But in general, you cannot do this. Why you cannot do this? Because Vo has some how are they called? They're not sentinels, even though the sense is that observers, right? Sorry?
The problem?
No, Vo has some observers, so that when you modify an array, it knows to update the visualization. But if you set an image, if you set an element of the array via the square bracket notation, Vo will not have its observers triggered. Okay, so if something very, very nasty happens from the point of view of a poor student or even a poor professor actually. What happens is that the code looks perfectly right because you assign the right quantity to the right element of the array. Okay? But you see that the screen is not updated, and so you become crazy because you're saying, look, you know, I just put it here, it's there, I can print it out. And it's true, it's there and you can print it out. But Wu relies on some observers for data structures to realize that it has to update the visualization. And if you do a direct assignment like the one I commented out in green, Wu will not realize and will not update the screen. Okay, so if you do really need to set an image of a list, this is documented in the Wu documentation, of course, which nobody reads, included me the first time, you know, I also went crazy. And so you have to use that $set, okay? Now, to tell you the truth, I don't know why I wrote the code in this way. I think I wrote it in this way a couple of years ago to give you this exact speech about what you had to do. Because in truth, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me how it is written. I would have simply written, you know, self-Wu image list of image index dot num stars is equal to star index. You know, that would have been much shorter and I wouldn't have run into the problem at all. Okay, so I don't know exactly why I wrote it in that way. But, you know, it's not broken. You see what I'm saying, right? Here I'm sort of doing something funny. I'm pulling image out of the array. No, I'm not pulling it out, but I'm saying image is this image here. I'm changing its parameters, and then I'm setting it back into the array, which is kind of silly. Okay? Great. But so, at any rate, I set the image parameters, and then I post the vote to the server, okay? When I post the vote, I'm giving both the image ID and the number of stars. Okay, because because these are the two things to give. You know, I don't need the other parameter that is obvious to give is who is the logged in user. But as you know, the server can already figure out who is the logged in user. You know how, right? How? Yeah, how? Do you know how? No. Yes? How does the server know who is the logged in user? Sorry? Yeah? Yeah, that's how you know it, auth.user. But how does the server figure out who is auth.user? Yeah?
The email parameter of auth user?
No, not quite. So there is a request that, imagine I'm the server, okay? Out of nowhere, because I don't know who is on the other side of a web request, really, I get this request that tells me an image ID and a number of stars incoming, you know? But how do I actually know who the user is? And maybe the question is, how do you ever know who the user is? And maybe this will help you. Yeah, the cookie, right. So in a sense, I cannot trust somebody to tell me who they are, you know, because it would be too easy to impersonate. I mean, if you tell me via crazy JavaScript rather than a browser that you want to set the number of stars to 2 instead of 5, I don't care, you know, that's your choice. You know who you are and you can decide how many stars to tell me. I don't need to guard me against that. But I certainly cannot have you tell me who you are in this simple way. I need to trust the cookie for that. Okay? So that's why we never communicate the user back among these parameters. Because, you know, you could in theory, right? I could set, I could in index.html, don't do this, okay? But in index.html, I could write a sort of line that says sort of, you know, script, end of script, no? And here I could write var user ID is equal to auth.userid. No? I could do something like this. And then I could send it back. But this would be a really bad idea, right? Because it would be then if I trusted this rather than the cookie and the auth.user, it would make it very easy for you to forge and pretend to be someone else. You see the point? You see why the rest of the information is sent via the post request, but not actually ever the user identity. Okay? I mean, it's kind of reasonable once I explain it, but yeah, but it's interesting to see, you know, how there is always a parameter missing in these calls. And so when you get back the result of the call, you do the obvious thing. So you say, I fish out the image, and I don't know why I write the things in this way. Perhaps I was ignorant 2 years ago, you know? It might have been my first time using Vue, frankly. And so I was doing this more complicated than necessary way. And I simply set pending to false. Okay, so now I'm actually irked by these, and so I will try to do these in a single shot. Okay, so this will be better. Okay, and we can verify that it works, because if I reload the site, and now I click on another number, hey. Uh-oh. Wait. Maybe I was not ignorant. Oh boy. That's super interesting. Then there was a reason. There was a reason. Yes. So evidently Vue was not able to observe that I changed an attribute. This was the real point, I think. Okay, I stand corrected. Vue was not able to observe that I changed an attribute of an element of a list. That was the problem, because the problem is this. Vue, you know, imagine this list as you know, this table, this long table is the list, and there are these various elements in the list. Okay, each one of these elements is a reference to an object, right? Below, somewhere, there is going to be an object that has various values for the fields. Now, like a guardian that stands and looks at this long table, Vue is observing what happens to the array. No, especially if you call this Vue set method, it's telling him, like, you know, hey, somebody is replacing what is in position 3, say. And so Vue will, you know, wake up and update the screen. But if you update something that is below in a pointer that is pointed by this list, Vue may not realize really that there has been the change. There is nothing that triggers the redisplay. And the maddening thing is that if you look at the code, it looks perfectly right. You can trace the call succeeds, you get it back, you send the dash pen, the underscore pending to false, okay, and everything works, except that the change is not reflected on the screen. So actually, I was wrong myself. I thought I could write it better, but no. Okay, so that's essentially a nastiness that is in many of these web frameworks in one way or another, you know, because these web frameworks are maintaining essentially a correspondence between JavaScript data structures and what is displayed on the screen. And to us, it looks magic, right? But it's not entirely magic. I mean, there is some implementation, and the implementation is done by, how many of you know the notion of subclassing? When I give you a class that has some augmented capabilities with respect to the base class. So essentially, there is a base class for arrays in JavaScript. And what Vue is doing is that if you are declaring an array as part of its data, in truth, it builds a subclass of an array that has some additional observer methods that help it deal with the changes and propagate correctly to the UI, you know. But then you need to access it in a certain way for all this to work, not in any random way, okay? So this is the Vue implementation. Are there any questions on the Vue implementation? I think it's a pretty sort of simple and neat piece of code. Questions so far? No. Okay, let's look now at the version done in JavaScript instead. So one moment, git branch, git commit am, one more comment. Okay, now git checkout stars. Okay, so the code changed. Now the Vue code is very simple. It does not contain anything special. The real action is not done in Vue, but is done directly in some non-Vue JavaScript. Okay. Okay, it's much less pleasant, I think. Do I really want to tell you how this works? Okay, let me give you. Let me describe to you the great lines of this, because out of all this code, there is only one piece of the code that I really want you to look at. Okay, so let me describe it to you in a slightly fuzzy way, and then zero in on the real place that I want you to look at, because I think it's fun. So, first of all, here we are using jQuery to manufacture, you know, this is how things look if you don't use something like Vue. You have to do everything by hand. And so here we are essentially building by hand these thingies. And these thingies are essentially spans that can contain stars. Okay, so I started to define a span, a variable span that is equal to feeding something to jQuery is a way to obtain a parsed node for the tree. Okay, so this builds this piece of HTML, which is essentially simply a span of white space that does not wrap. Okay, fine. Okay. And then, I don't know, this is kind of unpleasant. No, okay, look, this is too unpleasant. I don't want to go into this. I mean, it's too difficult if I haven't ever used this particular technique. So maybe let's do that. You know, I can prepare a video, or one of the TAs can go over it during section, but I don't feel I should spend the time on it now. I mean, it's just too orthogonal from the class. I just want to make you observe one particular behavior of JavaScript. You know, forget about all the rest of the details. But what we have to do is something like this. The critical place is this. We have to loop and make a loop for I that goes from 1 to 6, okay, for the values of the stars. And then we have to attach an observer to each star. So the usual way to do it, and let me copy and edit it, would be something like this. Let me just do the one piece that I wanted to show you, and then devolve this to another time in some way, okay? But so suppose you have a loop that does something like this, okay? And then your idea is this, that you may want to take some sort of, you know, so this is a jQuery selector, so I can choose an element. So I can say span with ID stars with ID stars underscore plus I. Okay, this will generate star 1, star 2, star 3. No, so this will select the appropriate span. Okay, and then I can say something like on click function of I I don't know, like do I, something like this. Okay, This is code that you may think that you write. So you're essentially writing a loop over I, where I assumes the values are from 1 to 5 because those are the stars, or from 1 to 5. You find the appropriate span and you attach to it a listener and you have it called something. That is in an incredibly awkward way what we are doing in a much more pleasant way via via Vue, right? In Vue, the much more pleasant syntax for these is something like this. Well, it disappeared, I'm sorry, because it's in the other branch, okay? But is this Vue code in which we call something with the index of the star, okay? So why is this a really bad idea? Because of how JavaScript binds values to calls, okay? So here we are essentially binding to that particular span a function. Sorry, I got it wrong. Yeah, the obvious thing to do would have been this. When click is called, you do I. Okay? So this is the obvious way to say it, right? I associate to each star a listener that when it listens to click, it does I. The problem of this is that it's true that while I run this loop, the value of I goes from 1 to 5. But when I exit this loop, the value of I will be generally 6, no? Because it's the value after the loop. That is assuming I don't recycle I for some other purpose, right? But in the code, I will be a variable that will have whatever value it has. If the scope of I is actually tied to the loop because of that var I, then I will be equal to 6 after the loop, okay? So I associate this listener and I have it called do of I. When you actually click on that element, whatever element it is, the function do is called with an argument of 6. Okay? This is clearly not good. And so the way to do it is something like this. You say that I have a function of an argument wait, where is it? The way to do it is this, okay, which may not make a lot of sense to you because you don't see a lot of difference between what I did and what was there before, okay? Essentially, instead of saying do I say function of no arguments do I. Why am I doing that funny thing? Because if I do this funny thing, the value of I is now frozen in the function declaration. You see? Now I am associating to each click a different function. And the function body has as value do I for that specific value of I. And that specific value of I becomes frozen in the function declaration. Because at declaration time, I had a certain value. I don't know if the sort of difference between the two implementations is clear. But so if you go into this code, that is the actual code, and you play with it, you see that there is this loop. I find this span, and I associate to it a click handler, which is a function that wait. Where is it? You see, this is a point actually, is this loop in which I use this function. Okay, so maybe, I mean, it is not a great idea to try to explain these, I guess, because you don't know too much of the rest of the code. So let me come back to the normal Vue track of the class, and instead explain how Stripe works. So yeah, now I should have prepared it better, frankly, that example. I thought it was easy to reconstruct, but I forgot how horrible it was without using Stripe, without using Vue. Okay, so I want to try to use this Vue cart single page. So this implementation of a purchasing application via cart. Okay, I don't have any particular change. So how does the site look like? Oh, the images are broken. Okay, so a lot of people ask me how to debug things. So let's try to debug these, because this rubber duck and teddy bear, it used to work. So why are they not working? I believe that they are not working just because they may not be in the database, the images. Oh no, I know why. Yeah, it's a little bit nasty. Let me see if I can fix it. I think the problem is that the images are missing because in the implementation of Web2Py by default, when you upload an image, if you use the forms, these images go into a directory. And the content of that directory may not have been checked into the repository, and so may have become broken in time. That's my guess. Actually, let me take it by steps, and let me figure out, if you have an application like this that is broken, what do you do to debug it? So let's look a little bit. One of the things I can do is that I can look at the network tab. Okay, and I can try to see what is happening with the requests. Dock to side. They changed a bit this interface. Interesting. Network, and I want all the requests. So if I request these, what do I get? I get that there are some 404s for the images. Okay, so evidently the server tells them that the images don't exist. If I go to the server, I will be told, because there is a log of all the requests, okay, that these images are the requests for the images. And you see, the problem is that it expects somehow to exist on a download directory, and they don't exist anymore. So let me restore the use of this app, I guess. Welcome, Luca. So I wait. So I know through the source code that there is an interface for actually managing you know, I have this product management interface, which unfortunately I don't seem to have linked from any place. Maybe I did link it. No, so I should link it, but so it is in default product management. Okay, and so I can just delete these and add some other products. Okay, so this is done with you can actually look at the source code. This is a very convenient form of using SQL form.grid, which I think I touched over in some beginning of the class. Okay, so now I can add a record. I can have like a jumping monkey. I have 10 on hand. The price is, what is the price? Is $12.99. And the image is, you see how easy life is when you don't use JavaScript, right? And the image is, yeah. I mean, one of these will be my jumping monkey. Nope. No, so it's maybe, no, hey, this one, okay? So this is my jumping monkey. Does somersaults. Okay, great. And now I add another product. I just want to have at least two. Okay, and another one was my skewy car. Okay, and I have 12 on these on hand. The price is only $9.99, and the image is I have here a skewy car. I don't know what the technical name is, but it's that, and like there's skews, whatever they are. Okay, so now I have at least two, and I can go home, and I should see two records. Hey. Interesting. Maybe one thing I learned is this is curious, right? Sorry?
Are these for the images? This log?
No, I think it may be because I on the server I log the request. But these now should exist, these product images. Let me see where they are. But one of the things I learned is never to try to debug these things in real time, unfortunately. You know, it never works well. So if this doesn't work, there is, you know, because they should be here, these product images. So we can actually give a look at what they are. So you see, this was a rabbit. So the images are there. Okay, let's debug it a moment. If the images are there, why don't I find them? Sorry, let me close a few of these things. So if the images are there, why don't I find them? Impressive, I don't know.
It used to be something else. It said response dot down the return statement response dot down. I remember it used to be something else.
These?
But 9.23. Yeah, it used to be something different in earlier version.
There used to be, sorry?
It used to be something else. I don't remember seeing response dot download.
In the download function? I haven't changed this code though. But I am using a newer version of Web2Py, so maybe they have changed the way they handle downloads in the newer version of Web2Py. I mean, it would be strange but possible. Where is this documented? Web2Py downloads, download file. Downloading files, displaying images. No, this is Stack Overflow. I want the official manual actually. Response download. Okay. Okay, so I don't think it is necessarily a good idea for me to debug it in class. So module that the images are not there, okay, and that I have to investigate what change exactly caused it. let me move on to the rest of the class because you know, debugging things takes a random amount of time, and so I don't know. I'll report what is wrong with the images, but at least we know that it's only the images. Okay, so what I can do is this. I can decide that I want quantity 2 of these. Okay, and I can click on buy, and this should go into the cart. So the cart now says that I have 1 element in the cart. Of these I may want to buy 3. Okay, so when I click on these, this goes to 2. Admittedly, you know, you can make a more responsive or a more fun user interface. Okay, then I click on the cart, and it gives me my shopping cart. I have quantity 2 of these and quantity 3 of these. This is the total price to pay. If I click on the credit card, this opens a dialog. I need to enter an email. Okay, then I need to say that I'm, what is it that he asks me? My name, Luca De Alfaro, I guess, and is like 1156 High Street, Santa Cruz, 9, so what is 6065? No, I don't know. Anyway, payment info, okay. And so here you have to give for 2 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 for 2. This is their testing card. You say 918, why not? And here you say like 1, 2, 3, no? Just, you know, random numbers. I mean, this has to be in the future, I guess. Then you say pay, okay? And this gives you the check mark and the payment happens. Okay, so I'll fix the image part and I apologize. But anyway, your image part works in a different way. So how is this implemented and why is it useful? So let me give you a bit of background about Stripe and about why it's a great idea to use Stripe. So the credit card industry has some regulation of which type of merchants can actually process credit card data. Okay, you need to have on file many documents that involve, for example, assertions that your code is developed according to a certain standards, that it passes some yearly certifications of security, that is done in one or the other way, that certain documents are on file. So if you follow the procedures before all the dust settles, you are essentially out of essentially $50,000 roughly. You know, equally divided in some certifications, in some lawyer fees, in some other things, you know, development fees. So it's an expensive thing to be certified to be an official credit card vendor. And this is what stores such as, you know, Amazon and Target and Walgreens are, right? So in those stores, you actually enter your credit card information directly in the store. And so, as you know, for example, Target was hacked some time ago. I mean, it's not the only one, right? But some of these, actually, Target, I think, was hacked for the cards that people would use in store. But if the site is hacked, you know, your credit card information can leak back out, okay? So this was the situation up to a certain number of years ago. And then companies like Stripe, and there is another one that then was bought by PayPal, that Braintree, I think it was called, decided to do something that is really quite marvelous and propelled the Stripe to be a many billion-dollar company in transactions processes, and I think also in value actually now. So the idea is this: when you put Stripe on your site, you don't have to do this very expensive certification because the credit card data never ever touches your site. The way this works in an approximate way, or actually fairly precise way, something like this. You say that you want to use Stripe and you build a description of the transaction, right? And you say, okay, I want to charge the user, how much was it? $55.95, okay? And I want a proof that they have paid. At this point, there is, as you saw, a window that opens in JavaScript, and that window contains some material that is fetched actually from Stripe without touching your site. Stripe fetches those forms which are done by Stripe, not by you, in which you fill in your information. I say, look at their file, I live here, that's my credit card, okay? When you click on pay, what happens is this, that Stripe takes the information you have filled in with your credit card details and tells it to its own server. Okay? The Stripe server does a bunch of stuff. It checks that your credit card is a valid credit card. It checks, it does, very sophisticated checks that they don't, of course, divulge on how they do it, but trying to get, to decline cards that may be associated with fraud. They have various databases and various rules and various whatever, okay? So the transaction has two outcomes. One is that it's declined. For example, if you put in, I think, a fake number, of course, is declined. And the other one is the transaction succeeds. If the transaction succeeds, your browser is given a confirmation code, okay? That confirmation code is given to the server. Okay? Now, the problem is this. And sorry if I need to do it in this way, but is more evident. Imagine that Scott there is the server, okay? I get this confirmation code that says banana, ananas, pear, and I give it to him. Now, his problem is this. The confirmation code says, this guy paid $55.95, and banana, ananas, pear is my code. He cannot trust it, obviously, right? Because unless he has some way to verify that banana ananas pear is an actual code given by Stripe, I could be a fake web page implementation that can give him every kind of fake information. I can say, this wonderful client, look at their file, just paid you $100,000. Let me check out my new Tesla, and the confirmation code is 3 bananas. No? And how is he to believe that this confirmation code is actually a real confirmation code, right? So I got, as the web interface, my confirmation code by calling Stripe with the credit card information. I rely to the server. Scott, who is playing the server role, will in turn call Stripe one more time with $100,000 and the confirmation code. And he will ask Stripe, without going through the browser, that cannot be trusted at this point, no? He will ask Stripe, hey, is it really true that this confirmation code you gave me is worth $100,000 in checkout value? And Stripe would say yes or no. Okay? And at that point, when he gets the yes on the server, he can actually store the transaction as a sale that actually took place. Okay? So there is this double contact of Stripe. There is the browser that calls Stripe, telling it the credit card information and getting back a code. And this is done so that your credit card information never actually touches the server. So that sites like a CrowdGrader can exist, because I don't know anything about the credit card information used to pay me. Because otherwise I would have to go through this incredibly complex certification process, right? I'm never given any of this information. Okay, but I'm given the confirmation code. Then I ask Stripe, is it true that this confirmation code was worth for this purchase? And Stripe will tell me yes or no. And at that point I can count the purchase. So we'll need to learn how to do this dance. Double dance of contacting the server in two places. And I just want to show you how it is done. The thing is this, that Stripe has some sample code that you are encouraged to look at. Stripe is really wonderful in the way it facilitates development. It did two key things. One is that it gives out very good sample code. And the other thing is that it actually gives out it gives out these testing keys that make it very simple, as you saw, to develop your application and test everything before you actually go into production mode. It's one of the smoothest development experiences I've ever had. It's easier to use Stripe that touches credit cards than sometimes Google Cloud Storage that instead, is just storing files in some ways because of the ease of just communicating with it. Okay, so that's really what made the company, in my opinion. That is so easy to integrate. And so let's look at the interesting bits of this code that you need to use for the homework. So where to start? Okay, I have various tricks. One trick that I use often is the following. If you want to build a single page app, but you have multiple logical pages. Here I have, a cart page and a checkout page, and I could have other pages. Like, how do you do that? How do you essentially give the user different stuff in front of their nose if you don't want to switch the entire page? So there are many tricks, but a very simple trick that actually kind of works well in many situations is this. You have a variable. Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't realizing this was covering up the code. You have a variable that I call simply page. And according to the page, I show one, the other, or the other div. So if you were writing different web pages, you would really writing one web page or another web page or another web page, right? Here I put them one below the other in a sense, and I use the value of this variable page to decide which of one of those divs to actually display. It's a very simple trick, okay? And as you can imagine, it's like coding with gotos, right? Because I set the value of page to some page, and but the web is a giant ball of gotos, and you know it. I mean, and it has to be that way because the user needs to be able to decide where to go. Actually, you cannot get the user stuck in a loop. Obviously, no. So I use this simple trick to decide which pages to show. So the page for the this is a page for the cart, and this is a page for the product list. The page for the product list at this point of the class to you should be fairly familiar. You should look at it, but there is nothing very strange in it. For example, this is the span where I put the product price. Okay? And, big deal. This is the product price that is taken from a variable. I'm doing a loop for all the products, for product in products. And then I fish out the product price and I put it there, right? These are the buy buttons, the one that I can say there is a button with a plus and a minus that increase or decrease the quantity that I want. And again, this is fairly simple. I call inc desired quantity, in which I give the product index and 1. And if you want to decrease it, I give inc decrease desired quantity with the product index and a -1, okay? So this part of the page is, by now, should be fairly well known to you, okay? So let's look at some more critical pieces. So when you click buy, you go to this function buy product. Now, there are two ways of doing a shopping cart. And I think that in the homework I was lenient and I sort of asked you to do the simple way. And I think actually here I probably just also did the simple way, right? So the simple way is something like this. If you buy a product, what do I do? I take the product, I check if it's already there in the cart, and if it's there, I increment it. So, this you don't have to do it with photos, because I imagine for the homework, again, making it easier for you that you buy a photo. You don't buy a quantity of a photo. Here I had the trouble that, suppose you're already buying 2 jumping monkeys. Now you say 3 and you buy 3. And you click again on buy. Do you really want to buy 2 plus 3 equals 5, or do you just want to buy the latest value? That's your decision. Here I think I have you pay the latest by the latest value. So that loop checks whether you have the item already in the cart to implement this check of what happens if you add it to the cart twice. But modulo that, what I do simply is self-vo cart quantity, I store the cart quantity for each particular thing. In your homework is a little bit different. In your homework, my suggested implementation is that you keep a list of images or image indices or something like that you want to buy, okay, or image URLs. It doesn't very much matter, okay? And you simply check when you click buy or when you click the shopping cart, if the image is in the list, then you remove it and you toggle the value of the cart, right? And if the image is not in the list, then you add it to the list. Okay, that's a reasonable homework implementation. Now, the point is this. This implementation of a shopping cart is a bit minimal, because if you go away from the site, your shopping cart is forgotten, or if you refresh the page, the shopping cart is forgotten, because the shopping cart, as it is implemented here, lives only into the Vue object memory, right? So a better implementation of the shopping cart would actually send back to the server the content of the shopping cart associated with each user. And when you land on that page, the first thing you would do is ask the server, hey, do I have a shopping cart content for that user? And restore it. And maybe if you like, either today or next time, depending on the time, I can show you how to implement this memorization of the shopping cart, okay? In this case, and for the homework, I don't care about you saving the shopping cart on the server, okay? I cut various corners, in order not to give too heavy homework, as you have also the project to worry about, okay? So, so this is essentially the non-VU logic. I mean, I described it in a very hurried way, but essentially, that's what there is to it, in the end, in this particular example, I have a cart in which for each thing I remember the quantity I want of the product I actually want to buy. Okay, so this cart contains two things. It contains, sorry. You see, it contains products, and then it contains a cart quantity for each product. P is a product. Okay, so I take a product and I attach to it a desired quantity. Sorry, a cart quantity. That's it. Is this semi-okay? So now I have to do the checkout code. So the whole complication of it is what happens when you... So displaying the content of the cart is again easy. Let's look at it briefly. Displaying the content of the cart is done here. No, sorry. Product list. Sorry. Okay, so this is a cart. Okay, so there is this total description. Then I have a cart total, etc. And the crucial thing to do is this pay button. Okay, that calls the function pay. So up to the pay code, what I'm doing is fairly normal. I think you should study it, but I don't do anything very strange. Do you want to ask questions on that code? Well, you can review it first, and then you can ask questions on Tuesday, okay, if you want to have more details. I think that's a good exercise. It's conceptually nothing very different from what you have seen so far. So if you pay, the problem is this. A lot of the sample code in Stripe will help you if you want people to pay a standard amount. So if you know already at the time you lay out the HTML page that you want people to pay $19, it's very easy to do. But this example is interesting because it's a little bit more sophisticated. I don't know the amount of money you need to pay statically. It depends on what you have in the cart. So I need to open a payment window in which the amount that you have to pay with your credit card is variable. I know it in JavaScript, but I don't know when you land on the page, right? It depends on what you did. So how does it work? It works in this way. The pay code is done... Sorry, I go around a little bit because it's here. So there is this notion of a Stripe instance. And I do the following. When I go to the cart page, I prepare the Stripe instance. Okay? The Stripe instance is essentially an object that will handle the communication with Stripe and is provided by the Stripe JavaScript library that is loaded by your code. Okay, so this Stripe checkout here comes from the Stripe library that is loaded in that line. Okay, so this you can decide when to create your Stripe instance, but I wanted to create it only when you actually go to the checkout page. Okay, just because it was a little bit cleaner. Actually, okay, and here I give it my test key for the browser, you know, there are two test keys. There is a public key and the secret key. The public key is the one that sits in the browser, and it's public because anybody who accesses the page is able to read it. If you go to the CrowdGrader checkout page, you will see that there is a key there, right? I mean, I cannot prevent you from seeing the key because I send it to your browser. So that's a public key. And then there is a private key that sits in the server. Okay, so the server part I will show you later. So I specify in this Stripe image instance my key, an image, which I didn't personalize, but this is a sort of logo that is displayed on top of your pay, you know, field where you enter your thing. Auto means, you know, choose the localization for country, you know, automatically according to the IP address, essentially, something like that. And then I specify this function. It's called token, but this essentially is the function that will be called upon success of the payment. Okay, and that is passed the token that is received from Stripe and some other arguments that contain the customer information. Okay, so when you create the Stripe instance, you know how when you make a server call, you need to specify the function that will be called upon return. This is similar. I create a Stripe instance. So this instance will validate the purchase with Stripe, and I want to specify the callback when the purchase happens. And the callback is called a token. I don't know why. Because it's the function that receives the token, I guess, okay? And so I need to specify a function of two arguments, and that function will do the following. It will say that I log that I got the token from Stripe, okay? I set the Stripe token and the customer information because I want to be able to send this to the server. I could have used those two things as arguments to my send the data to server command. That would have been a slightly cleaner implementation, but I think I wanted to be able to examine those values, and so I wanted to write them into some class variables, you know, for ease of inspection and debugging. I think that's the only reason, okay? But so I write the Stripe token and customer information, and then I call my own function that sends the data to the server. Okay, so this is how the cart instance works. Now, when you say pay, this Stripe instance that I defined, okay, I want to cause it to actually open on your screen. So I call its open method, and here I can actually specify what are the parameters of that particular opening, which is mainly the amount, the price. And I also specify that I wanted to ask your billing address and shipping address because I imagine I'm shipping you products. You can set those to false for electronic delivery, obviously. You can say the name of the business and the description of what you're doing. Okay, so you can specify these parameters dynamically when you open your Stripe instance. Okay, the dollar amount is measured in cents, so that you're sending around integers. Okay. They don't like rounding in finance, no? So that's how it works. And so when you want to pay, I just ask the instance to open. And the flow is that the instance will open, you will be presented with those sequence of forms, and when the payment happens, it will call back to this function here, that will save the values called send the data to the server, and send data to the server is in charge of doing the purchase, of communicating, the token of the purchase to the server. So what am I sending to the server? I'm sending the customer information, the transaction token, okay, the amount, and the content of the cart. Okay, those are the obvious things that I need to give to the server in order to complete the transaction. Okay, and then I will receive from the server some data. This is again a very simple implementation. but the data can be whatever you want. You are sending back this data. For example, this data could contain an error message or could contain anything. I simply decided that in my very simple implementation, if your transaction didn't go through, I would return an error of 500 or something like that. You know, perhaps that's a fairly ugly implementation, I agree. But in this simple example, I simply handled the success. And so upon success, I empty the cart, I update cart, store cart, I go to products, and I flash thank you for your purchase. There is no provision for handling failure. Okay? Now, the piece that is missing is what does the server have to do in order to respond to these? Okay? So we are at the point in which we are telling the server, okay, here is the customer information, transaction token, amount, and content of the cart. Clear up to this point? Kind of. It's always a matter of following the JavaScript around a little bit. So what do you do on the server when you receive a transaction like this? Well, it's yours to decide. But what I do is here, in my purchase function, I tried to write very small code. Okay, somebody reminds me later to explain the meaning of these two lines, okay? But otherwise, I need to contact Stripe. So I import the Python Stripe library, which is called Stripe, okay? I set in the library what is my API key. This is my private key to Stripe. You see, you remember that I told you there were two pairs, the public one that is given to the browser and the private that is private to the server, okay? So I set my private key. I read the token and the amount of the transaction from the web request, okay? And then I try to create a charge. This is a pretty strange code, right? But creating a charge is a Stripe way of saying, hey, can you really charge the customer for this amount of money? The customer is not charged until this particular transaction goes through. Okay? So there are the two parts of the transaction. The first one that is initiated by the browser simply validates that the credit card is a valid credit card, is not a fraud, is this, is that, and can possibly succeed, and it gives me a token. Okay? Now the server with the token contacts Stripe, and Stripe does the second part of the transaction, which essentially has two possible outcomes. Either it succeeds and the consumer is charged, or it fails and the consumer is not charged. This is a guarantee Stripe gives you. Okay, so you created this charge, and then you have to handle the error. And in this case, I see that I return OK and not OK, and I don't actually use these values in the browser, in the method. So I actually should write better code, and I can improve it now. But essentially, if there is an error, you can say the card has been declined. I can log everything I want, and I can return the not OK. And if instead, if the charge went through, I say, I insert the order in my list of orders, okay, and then I return OK. So here, if I wanted to improve this code a bit, let me do it. Okay, I can return, what can I do? Return response JSON, like of a dictionary that says like result is equal to not OK. Okay, this will be one way. Instead of this simply OK and not OK, I may like to do this a little bit better. For homogeneity, I always like to return a result in this way. And so, if I did it in this way here, in the JavaScript, I can write if data.result is equal to OK, then I do this. else, and I don't know. I mean, I could give better things, but I can simply say, you know, the card was declined. Okay, something like this. I mean, this is marginally better. You have to decide exactly what to do. But I just wanted to show you how to communicate. The problem is that you will not notice the server, the difference in homework code, right? Because if you use a testing API, unless you make a mistake and you send it to Stripe the wrong content, then the thing is never declined. Okay? Because, you know, there is no security checking or anything. Okay. By the way, for the beauty of its services, Stripe charges you 30 cents per transaction plus 2% or something like that. Okay. So, I mean, everybody charges something, of course. Now, the only point I didn't quite explain, and I want to come back to it, is this call to purchase. Let me see a moment, because I don't remember why I did it in that way. So I have to tell you the truth, I don't remember exactly why I did it in that way, but the general goal was for me to be able to sign this URL, and I don't remember at this point why I did not just sign the URL with user signature is equal to true as you always do. Okay, it simply went out of my mind. I mean, I wrote this code a couple of years ago. But I decided to use another method of signing the URL, which is sometimes useful, and it is especially useful if the user is not logged in. I don't remember if the reason was that I wanted this page to work also for non-logged in users, but that might have been the real reason, right? So if you want to sell stuff, I presume that this is the reason, but I cannot swear it, okay? So this is an interesting problem. You want to sell stuff, but you don't want users to log in. How many times you are irked by this? Create an account if you want to complete your purchase, you know, and you could suffer the less for it. I mean, you really don't care about creating an account. You just want your credit card to be charged and you to get out with the product, right? That's what you really want. So how can you implement these? The point is that when you create the charge with a credit card, you need to do a post. And that post is, a good idea to make it to assign the URL. But now, perhaps this, in this case, is a slight excess of paranoia, okay? Because what happens if I don't sign that URL for the pay function? Nothing really bad happens, because what can happen is that Rakshit, who is very malicious, as we all know, of course I'm kidding, that Rakshit can build on his Facebook page some funny trick in order to send me some purchase command, right? But the point is that he cannot forge a good token that Stripe will accept. So even if it tries to buy these jumping monkeys from me using this strange Facebook command, you know, forging the shipping address, I will get as the server this command, I will give it to Stripe, and, you know, Stripe will tell me, no, the card is declined, you know, the transaction never happened, okay? Was never initiated by the user. So it's only that, you know, as a vendor, I don't want to send a lot of spam to Stripe. I don't want to send Stripe a whole bunch of bogus transactions, because if I do, I'm sure that sooner or later I will hear from Stripe that will tell me, hey, you know, your site has some funky stuff going on, you know, and either you fix it or I think we will suspend your account. No, I'm pretty sure. I haven't tried it for obvious reasons. But so it's a good idea to sign that URL. Now, user signature is equal to true is a perfect way to sign URLs for logged in people. But if the user is not logged in, how do I sign a URL? And the answer is this. All I need in truth to sign is to invent a secret that is shared by the server and by the client. That's all it takes, okay? And Web2Py is kind enough that in session.hmackKey, that particular value in session, if you go look for it in the documentation of Web2Py, contains a random variable that is, a long random string that is specific to each request session, okay? So I decided, why don't I use that random string there, which is was built by Massimo exactly for this purpose? Why don't I use that string in order to build my signature, right? And so here I specify hmackKey is equal to session hmackKey. That's a way to specify what the signature should be, okay, directly. I'm specifying a variable hmackKey with a secret content. On the receiving end, to verify that this corresponds to the session, I say, if not URL verify request hmackKey is equal to session hmackKey, I raise a server error. Okay, so this is my way of verifying that the request contains an hmackKey that corresponds to the one of my session. You see? You see how this is done on both ways, right? So this is a way of signing that depends simply on the existence of a cookie, of a session cookie, and not on the user being logged in. Okay? And it enables people to complete the purchase without being logged in. So, I mean, this is what I wanted to tell you about Stripe. So that's, I mean, you can ask questions now or next time. Is it somewhat clearer? Now, the thing that I haven't told you is now everything is great, but once you complete the transaction, what do you do with it? And I believe that I have included in the application a way to access the database. You see, there is a product management, and there is another function that says view orders. You see that when the order succeeds, I insert it in the database. No, it's done here. I have a table called customer order, right? And if I go to the view orders, I need to make these methods accessible from a pull-down menu. I will do so. But if you go in default view orders, okay, this of course I should verify that the user is a user that is only Luca Del Faro or whoever the shop owner is should be able to see the list of orders. But here I have all the various orders. Actually, I have only 5. Why? Wait. I think I know the reason. And I think I want to pretend that it works unless you discover why it doesn't. Hold on a moment. Wait, where is my output? Okay, so the problem is this, okay? That actually my transactions weren't going through. Because my API key is no longer valid. Okay? I kind of imagined it that I had invalidated this pair of keys that I was using because I made the mistake 2 years ago of making them public. And so after making them public, I invalidated them. There is a button on the Stripe site that tells you rotate key pair, and I rotated it. And so this pair is no longer valid. Okay? So that's why I have only the older transactions. Okay, I may update my code, but essentially here what you have is these. So it looks like these are a successful transaction. I store the order date. The customer information is something like this. You see, it contains all the billing information, and the transaction token contains. So the cart is the cart. Okay, it contains what I wanted to buy encoded in JSON. And the transaction token is pretty interesting. So this is the only information I actually know of who the buyers are. I get their client IP address. I get some token. I get the address line. I get the type of card, which is a Visa. The CVC check is passed. I get the last 4 digits of the card, the expiration month, and not much else, right? So if you pay me in CardGrader with a credit card, somewhere I store which card brand you used, whether Visa, Master, what's the circuit, not which type of Visa, but I store the circuit and the last 4 digits. And part of the reason is that if I need, I can easily look people up on back on Stripe. Because I also have their email address, I can look them back on Stripe, and if I have to refund somebody, it's a very easy thing. So, for example, Rakshit could have paid with the 2 cards, 2 different transactions, and they can see which cards from the last 4 digits, and they can, refund him money on any of the 2 cards. Stripe makes this kind of, backend thing very easy. You can go to the backend and void or refund the transactions or pay people back money, etc., etc. Okay, so this is what I know at the server side. Okay. Okay. See you Tuesday. So I'm not sure I will fix my key because I don't want to give out a working key, but everything else should work about the site.